Okay, so welcome back to today's class. This is actually like the second day of Pl Sql. We did some bit of introduction yesterday, and today we are advancing. So at least based on what we did yesterday, I'm sure that now you are not new to Pl Sql, at least you're familiar with some few concepts here. But I'm going to repeat on this particular section before we look at what we're supposed to do today. So yesterday we talked about what is a Pl Sql. It all stands for Procedural Language Extension for SQL. And SQL means that it's going to be embedded within the Pl Sql block. And that is the reason why we had to talk about the three types of Pl Sql block. Number one, we talked about anonymous block. And for anonymous block, remember this one does not have a name attached to it. So you cannot actually call it. Once it's done, then it's done. Then it means that if you want to execute anonymous block again, you have to write the entire code. That means the entire block for you to execute it once more time. And apart from anonymous block, we also talked about the named blocks. Named blocks means that the two, that is the procedures and functions. It means that both of them, a name must be attached to them. Because if you want to create a function, if you want to create a procedure, you must start with create or replace procedure, create or replace function, just the same way we did yesterday. So if at all you are asked, just mention like three types of Pl Sql block, be in a position to give these three: anonymous block, procedure, and function. Now we also talked about how can we generate Pl Sql messages? How can we generate Pl Sql messages? So to generate the output, or to get the output messages in Pl Sql, we are required to actually use two things. Number one, you're supposed to have set server output on. Remember, we have the Pl Sql engine, which communicates, or which directly communicates with the Oracle server. So you have to ensure that the engine is actually turned on by using this particular code here, set server output on. Now, once you do that, you just press enter. And remember that whatever thing you've been doing in SQL, we are now graduating it, or having it, putting more weight on Pl Sql. And this means that in Pl Sql, it's all about shadowing the SQL, because when you talk about SQL and Pl Sql, remember we have this term embedding. So we are able to embed SQL in Pl Sql. So for example, I'm going to give you, for example, like select first underscore name. We have salary from employees, where employee underscore ID equals to 100. Remember, this one is a single row. So we are trying to capture the first name and the salary. And the same way we are capturing the first name and the salary, you also have the option of capturing more than this, because we know that in employees table, we have multiple columns. So what happens here is that if I'm to capture only first name alone, with Pl Sql, I am able to do that. So in this case, I can just use declare. And then in the declaration section, we are expected to declare either the variables, the constants, and even the user-defined exceptions. But we will talk about the rest when the time comes. So what we're able to do as the starting point for us, we want to understand how can we declare what? How can we declare this? So we are actually declaring a variable. And here we need to bring out the two. And we are supposed or required to get Stephen and 24,000 as the salary for Stephen. So here we have like two columns. Yesterday we had only one column, first name. So after declaring, you're supposed to create a variable for first name. And remember, variable is just like a temporary container for holding values. So in this case, I can have even like VF name. So VF name, V for like variable. So that name is dynamic. It is not like you're supposed to use that the same way I've actually placed it, but you're supposed to define it in such a way that somebody can relate it with the actual name, which is actually first name. So first name, data type is varchar 220. And then vsal, you can just use the same thing for salary. And then of course, I think it is number. So we want to capture this. And then now you're done with this. So if we were having more than these two columns, then of course we're supposed to create the number of variables should actually be in line with the number of the select columns. Now, then come and say select first underscore name, comma, salary into v underscore f name, comma, v underscore sal from employees where employee ID equals to 100. Employee equals to 100. So we are talking about what? About this. Now, for this case, it means that if I end here, let me just end it without putting the DBMS. Press enter, press that. Now, you see that here we are getting what? Pl Sql procedure successfully completed. It means that we do not have any error within our code. Everything is okay. But the problem here, we are not getting the output, the right output, that is Stephen and 24,000. And yet we've actually applied the set server output on. So the reason is that for us to get the output, we need to apply the output generator. So for my case, I'm going to repeat the same thing. I'm going to repeat the same thing, but this time round, I'm supposed to put DBMS output dot put underscore line into bracket. Into bracket this time round, I can have v underscore f name, and then I can repeat the same thing. This one is v underscore sal, and then you end, and then like that. So you can see that I have like two DBMS underscore output dot put underscore line twice, appearing twice. So it means that the first one is to capture the VF name, the second is to capture the vsal. But in this case, probably the question that someone can ask, is it a must for me to use both DBMS? Like if I have the number of variables, if I have like 10 variables, do I need to just use like 10 DBMS underscore put underscore line? No, you can just even use only a single DBMS underscore output dot put underscore line, but now you have to define all the variables within that bracket. But this time around, you have to separate them. So I will show you. So now you can just press enter, and automatically you can see that we have Stephen and 24,000. Stephen and 24,000. Now, the point I was trying to bring it up, let's see. Now here means that if we are to apply, let me get the pipe simple because I don't have that. Okay, let me just, so if we are to apply this concept, then we can just come and put this mark. We can just have this mark. It's actually called like a pipe simple. And then you can just put space, and then put the same mark that is double marks, pipe simple, and then put vsal. Now, after putting that, you can now press enter, and then you terminate. So terminating means you have to end with a semicolon, and then put a / and press enter. Now you can see that the relationship the relationship between this one and this one is actually, they actually give us the same answer, but the way the output is displayed is different. For this case, I'm just using like one output generator, that is the DBMS underscore output dot put underscore line. But here we are using more than one. So you can just separate this. Now, what this means, especially when we have these double single quotations, is that you can just put your literals there. You see, you can just put your literals there, that you can make a sentence. It's more like making a sentence. So let me show you how you can do that. Let's go. Let's bring it here. So here I can just create a sentence. Let's say, for example, I can have Stephen, let's say salary is, you see, Stephen's salary is. So let's see the output. You see, so Stephen's salary is 24,000. Stephen's salary is 24,000. So that is just by understanding like the concept. We did actually take our time yesterday to understand the benefits and structure of Pl Sql, to examine the Pl Sql blocks, that is the anonymous block, the functions, and the procedure, just by having that structure. But although we implemented the anonymous block, even what we've already done, and we also looked at generating output messages in Pl Sql. So how do we generate them? One, you have to set server output on, and secondly, you have to include dbms underscore output dot put underscore line in where? Within your block. Now, so this means that in between this block, we have the declare, which is an optional, but for this case, it's mandatory. We have the begin, which is mandatory. That one you cannot have like, you cannot actually think about having that as an optional. And of course, we have end, which is a must. And to execute the point, you have to put the /. Now, if you look in between the begin and the end, this is an area where we are embedding SQL statement. We are embedding SQL statement. So whatever thing we've been doing with PML, that means by selecting. You see here already we've applied select statement. So this is a proof that using select statement within Pl Sql block is okay, that you can get some output. We can also use the insert later. We can also use the delete. We can also use the update. Within where? Within the begin and the end section. So as we get to understand Pl Sql, then we will also be able to capture more information, more knowledge from this. So for this case, I know that probably that is just but an introduction. And of course, remember that we are able to integrate SQL statement within the Pl Sql program code or block, of course, and so many other things. Now, so the next thing is, how do we probably declare Pl Sql variables? I know that we've already looked at declaring Pl Sql variables. And in this case, we have some things to understand, or we have some concepts to also understand how we can make sure that we get to understand these variables in a more deeper way. So we did some introduction. So we need to talk about variables again. We need to examine these variable data types, because we can end up having different data types. And of course, how can we have the shortest route? Because at some point, we may tend to forget the data types. And again, how do we get to understand what are bind variables? So you see, when we talk about variables, variables can actually be used in 3 ways. One, they can be used for storing data temporarily. Remember, I defined a variable as a temporary storage to all the data. So it can be used to store data temporarily. It can also be used to store values, or values that can be manipulated. And again, it can be reused more than one. once. So for this case, if you can look at this particular part, you see the way to look at a variable as a container. You see, when we talk about first underscore name, we have a name attached to that as far as employees table is concerned. But we are mapping. It's like we're getting information from first underscore name and we are putting into v underscore f name. Now, here is the rule. Don't alter the order. You start with first name, the variable attached to that should start. You second is salary, you move with the second variable, which is actually salary. So with Pl Sqls, you can declare variables and then use them in SQL and again in probably the procedural statements. And of course, we've talked about like variables are mainly used for storage of data and manipulation of stored values. And at the same time, it can be used for reusability. That means you can use them repeatedly in an application by referring to them multiple times in various statements. So what are the requirements for variable names? What are the requirements for variable names? Number one, a variable name must start with a letter. Number one, a variable name must start with a letter. So you cannot start a variable with any, based on the rule. So number one, you must start with a letter. Number two, a variable can include letters or numbers. You can include letters or numbers. You can include special characters such as $, underscore, and #. You can include characters or special characters such as $, underscore, and #. Now, a variable name must contain no more than 30 characters. So of course, if you are like probably you want to write a variable with the longest characters or with more characters, then ensure that you don't exceed 30 characters. So of course, when it comes to variables, we don't even go beyond 10. We always look for something which is shorter. And then you must not include reserved words. Don't use reserved words. When I talk about reserved words, for example, it's like select, it's like update, it's like insert, it's like delete. These are reserved words within the database. These are reserved words within the database. So you are actually prohibited. You are actually prohibited from doing what? From using this. So what happens here? What happens here is that if we are to apply or write variable names, then we have to go by the rules. Number one, variable name must start with a letter. So you cannot start with any other. You cannot start with a number. You cannot start with a symbol. But variable name again can include letters or numbers. You can start with a letter followed by a number. It's okay. But don't start with a number and then followed by a letter, because the rule number one is that you must start with a letter. You can also include special characters after that letter. You can also, because you saw me having, and V is a letter, underscore. So you see, I can have underscore, I can have $, I can have #. And of course, it must not exceed 30 characters, and you must not include reserved words. So it's very important. It's very important. Now, how do we handle these variables? So variables are declared and optionally initialized in the declarative section. Optionally initialized. It means that if you are declaring a variable within the declaration section and you want to use that within the begin and the end section, then it means that you are putting that variable into use. That means you are initializing that variable. You can also use variables, or variables are used and assigned new values in the executable section. That means, of course, we are being, for example, here, the variable has been initialized. And here we are applying, or we are trying to assign new values to that particular variable. And these new values are coming from first name. So you must also do that. And then of course, the same variables are passed as parameters to Pl Sql subprograms. So we'll also talk about that. And when we talk about the subprograms, this is the inclusion of the functions and the procedures. Then of course, they are also used to alter the output of Pl Sql subprogram. So those are just but variables. These are just but variables. So what happens is that when it comes to having these variables, so when it comes to these variables, so when it comes to these variables, when it comes to these variables, there are a lot of things to be considered, like rules, like guidelines, but at the end, we have to understand them. And of course, we will manipulate these particular variables in different ways. We will manipulate these variables in different ways. Now, for example, you see, when these variables are declared, you must attach an identifier. So these are like keywords. An identifier in Pl Sql refers to the name of the variable. So the name of a variable like v_fname is an identifier. Now you also saw that with that identifier, I was able to put a data type like v_fname space varchar 220. Or varchar 2. Data type is the varchar 2. Again, you have to know that which data type are you putting in and which data type are you not putting in. So when declaring and initializing Pl Sql variables, we have even different ways. For example, apart from what we have in the database, if I want to print a name, let's see, now it's not case sensitive. You can even work with the lower cases, so it's not case sensitive. So let me just use the uppercase. I want just to show this. Now here I can just come out with the variable. Let me have it as name, and then have it as what? Varchar 2, varchar 220. Then have it as begin. Then from here, I'm going to have it as dbms underscore output dot put underscore line into bracket. And here it means that I want to bring a name. So it's like creating a sentence, because remember what we are doing, it's not even anywhere within the database. So here I can just say my name or the name of the institution. Let's say the name of the institution is, you see, the name of the institution is, and then put to this. I had an issue here with a simple. Let me just copy the simple, bring it there. Just right click, paste it. So for your case, you have to look for this particular simple. And I'm going to put it v underscore. So v underscore name, and then put the bracket. So from this point, you'll find that, yes, it's not anywhere within the database. I'm trying only to capture a name. So, and the name is that the name of the institution. So what we will do is that I will come down here and put vname. This time round, I will introduce the full colon with an equal sign, the full colon with an equal sign. And this means that I'm going to attach a name. So since the name is a character, I have to put it in between a single quotation. So here I can just talk about ist, and then put that. And then we will just come and end, and then do that and press enter. So here you can see that the name of the institution is not actually yet displayed. What is the problem here? What is the problem here? So the code does not have an error. The code does not have an error. But in this case, if I repeat it again, so if I repeat it again, you can see that I am having the name of the name of the institution is IST. The name of the institution is IST. So this means what? This means that, you see, whenever you are assigning or declaring a variable, whenever you're declaring a variable, this means that you're supposed to put the declaration, or that variable should be declared first before getting the message. So this means that in the first block, or in the first DBMS underscore output, which of course is this one, in the first this, we are not getting any output. But what happens in there? The variable was declared. The variable was declared, yes, but not initialized. You see, the variable is declared here, but it is not initialized. The initialization I'm talking about is that we need to attach a name to this point. You see, we need to attach a name to this point. And that is the initialization way. Now, let me just ignore the first one. Let me bring it more clearly so that we can see. So, and then now look at that. So it means that we have ignored this part, because at the moment, this actually does not help us. It does not help us unless I have another variable declared up here, unless I have another variable declared between the begin. So for this one, it means that this one I've actually declared a variable. And of course I have initialized. So the variable is being declared here, and the variable is being initialized here by assigning a value to that particular variable. Now, let me bring it once more time. And you can just see a direct replica of this. So here I can just have declare, have that, sorry for that. So if I can just bring this, declare colon equals to, let's talk about Institute of Software. Institute of Technologies. Now, then we bring begin, and then yeah. So here we are talking about we have something numerical value error, character string buffer too small at line. Yeah, so it is too small. Now the reason is what? Let me just bring it this so that I can explain on that error. Declare so that I can just, let's say IST begin. Now look at this. For this one, I'm getting the correct answer, like IST. Now, where do you think this error is coming from? Numeric or value error, character string buffer too small. Now remember here, this variable called v_name has to take some values. And the values that are supposed to be taken in is of character strings. but here we've given the size 20. We've given the size 20. So it means that this 20 compared to the number of characters of Institute of Software Technologies here is more than these values. So if we can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 20. So already it is beyond what? It is beyond the size. Unless we had like 300, then of course this one is going to be occupied well. So this is just but the simplest way of declaring this. Now let me restructure the other one, the first one. We had the first one, we got an error. So let me declare VF name. Again, I can have V underscore, let's say S name, virtual to bracket 20. Now we can go back to begin. Okay, before begin, I want to assign V underscore S name. V underscore F name, we can just give it as, let's say IST. And then now we bring up the line. So this one is going to be S name. And then we had this one. Okay, so we'll change this one to be like IRM. And then we also have here as VName. And then we have end. Then we have this. Now look at this one. So it means that the variable V underscore name has been declared here. V underscore S name has been declared here. So I think we're going to get an error here because of, okay, let's see. Here I've actually put place 2. This one I've not actually placed 2. Let me press enter and see. Yeah, so I think it's okay. Varchar is also accepted. Car is also accepted. Varchar 2 is also accepted. So the name of the institution is IST. The name of the institution is IRM. And this is just a way of declaring variables and initializing variables. So I think up to that point, you're going to proceed. But meanwhile, I just want you to look at this, because if we are able to get to capture this information from, from this basic point, before even we move to more complex things, then we're going to make Pl Sql as comfortable as it is. So probably based on what I've texted you in WhatsApp, we're going to pick from that point.